All right, good morning or good evening, irrigation contractors. Hi, my name is Eric Jones. I have put together a PowerPoint presentation entitled Business Entity. One of my favorite topics to discuss with my students at the community college level, and that's this course is really just an introduction of the types of entities that we can form our businesses. Whether it be a sole proprietorship, a corporation, limited liability company, all of these business entities are have their great points, and they have a few bad points, but I will let you guys be the judge of that. And to begin with, I do want you to know that I am not a CPA or an attorney, so you must if you'd like, please seek legal advice before forming one of these business entities. This is just an informal introduction. It is course number 9755, approved for 1 hour of CEU for business hours on your 2012 and future license points. So, a little bit about myself. I am the program coordinator and a full-time faculty at a local community college in Winston-Salem. This is a PowerPoint that I do show my students in horticulture marketing and management. And so let's go ahead and let's get started. All right, the way that a business is set up is often as important as how it is run. And the choice of business entity often has a huge influence on the eventual success or failure of that business. And that's a lot said in that paragraph. That's a lot to chew off, with the first slide. But it is very important when you're considering income taxes, when you're considering ownership of equipment, on how you would set up your business. And that's why we're going to look at each one of these in a little bit more detail. But seriously, guys, before you would want to form a corporation or an LLC or do a sole proprietorship, doing business as, you need to speak to legal counsel or a CPA. All right, sole proprietorships. It's the oldest and one of the easiest forms of business to have. In the sole proprietorship, there is a single individual who conducts all aspects of the business. My dad was a sole proprietor for years. It wasn't until me and my brother actually graduated college that he, formed a corporation. He was president. He set up both me and my brother as a VP. My mom was secretary treasurer, and actually, conducted the corporate minutes, had the shareholder meetings every year, stuff like that. We did everything by the books. And but with the sole proprietorship, it was it was easy to set up. You set up your own checking account. It would could be your name, doing business as whatever. But there's some very, very good aspects of being a sole proprietorship, and then there's some things that could actually that could hurt you in the long run. So it's really up to you and your accountant on what's the best type of structure for you guys to have. All right, if the sole proprietor is sued because of some business disagreement, his personal assets are endangered. That's the biggest drawback to being a sole proprietor. There's we're in irrigation, we're in landscape, and I can see it more something bad happening to an individual that's a sole proprietor in the landscape business versus irrigation. But I mean, there all could be some things that could happen. But I knew, for instance, that I didn't know the guy personally, but one of my students knew of a guy had a small mowing business. Well, he was mowing one day near the road, and he actually picked up a rock, and it went through the windshield, the door glass, and hit not the driver but the passenger in the front seat, and it hurt the individual pretty bad. There, several trips to the doctor, hospital bills, and it put this person, out of commission work-wise. They were no longer to work. I mean, she had some brain damage because of it. Well, this guy lost everything he had because he wasn't in a corporation. He was doing this, as a side business job. So his personal assets were seized to help pay these medical bills. So you can lose everything you've got when something like that happens. And this is true because there is no legal boundary between a sole proprietor assets and his personal assets. It's all under your name. Even though if you're doing business as, say, my name's Eric Jones. Say I'm doing business as Sunset Lawns, and hope there's not anybody named that out there. This is just, I'm throwing it out there. So Eric Jones doing business as Sunset Lawns. Well, I am buying equipment. I also have my house. My wife has her car. I have my truck. I have my lawnmowers. I have my weed eaters, and all the good stuff that goes along with cutting a lawn business. All that's pulled together. Me and my wife own it together. There's no part of the business that has its own trucks, that has its own equipment. Well, say for instance that student of mine's friend who was if he was a corporation or an LLC, and he had his business equipment, his truck, his mowers tied up and owned by the company, the lady that was injured could only go after the company's assets because he was protected in that somewhat of a corporate veil from his personal assets. When you tie all these things together, it all becomes fair game to actually help someone out with medical bills, or you rear end somebody, but you'll have insurance for that. But any type of damage or injuries caused by the business, they can go after your personal assets if it's not protected by a corporation. But one of the most obvious advantages to a sole proprietorship is the freedom given to the owner to make business decisions, and that is until you get married and it becomes a joint decision. But seriously, yes, you are the owner. You're taking the risk. You're the one that started the business, so you ultimately make the business decisions, and that's the fun thing about it. It may make it a little more difficult trying to get funds or to secure financing being a sole proprietorship, but you're the guy out front. You're the one making all the business decisions, and and I think that's why a lot of people get into lawn care. That's why they get into landscape and irrigation business, because we can actually get started, and run the show from the get-go. That's that's the funnest thing about our jobs. Also, one of the other major advantages of the sole proprietorship is when you're doing your income taxes. If you sustain a major loss during the year, you can pass it through on your personal tax return. That's not going to happen if you're a corporation. If the corporation loses money, it's like, oh well, you've lost money. But being the sole proprietorship, that can be passed through, and hopefully maybe get some of that money back through your taxes. When you're a corporation, especially the C corporation, it's you're going to the corporation is going to pay tax, and then if you're taking a salary on from the corporation, that's going to be taxed as well. So there's that double taxation that happens with the corporation. Yeah, and this is a a kind of a sad situation, but when you are in a sole proprietorship and you're the single person that is running the show, and God forbid that something happens to you or any of us, but we know that day's coming, and if we are a sole proprietorship, and which a lot of us in the lawn care and landscape business is. Most irrigation contractors aren't, because there's a lot more work involved with that. But you see a lot of guys that have, the one-man show doing lawn care, doing lawn maintenance, and have a pretty successful business and making a good living doing it. And what if something happens? And take for instance me, if I'm running that Sunset lawns, and I'm cutting 100 lawns a week, and that's sustaining me and my wife and our 3 little girls, and all of a sudden I die in a car wreck, and we basically have to shut down the lawn cutting business because my wife can't do it. She works, so there's half the income gone, and the business would basically be shut down. Yeah, you could always sell the accounts to somebody else, but still, that's not like having the income for doing each one of those each week. There's just no way for that business to continue without me doing it, or any sole proprietor in their business. Sole proprietors, they often suffer from not having enough money, or not having, or being undercapitalized. It's they're only allowed to use their personal credit and financial resources to rely on. And many sole proprietors find it difficult to expand their businesses or to pay unexpected bills. Well, a few years back, it was a lot easier for people to get into lawn care business. And I hear my dad talk about this time and time again. He's like, son, when I first got started, he said, I had to beg and beg and beg Wachovia Bank to buy my first pickup truck to work out of. And he said, he got his degree in horticulture and actually worked for another landscape contractor several years before going out on his own. And this was, late 60s, early 70s. And he said, heck, the first 2 or 3 jobs he had when he went out on his own, he made more money than he did the whole year working for the other guy. But he still had trouble getting the capital. The banks just made it impossible to borrow money. And look what happened in the with the housing market. Anybody could buy a $200,000 or even $500,000 house without showing income. So that's when we've seen a large influx of people buying mowers, buying trucks, getting into the business. It was so easy to get into it. So now we're seeing, a turn for the worse. With the housing market going, it's going to be a little bit harder for guys to actually go up and just start a lawn care business. And they're going to be sole proprietors. So this is what they're going to be facing now, is they're going to have to rely on their personal credit and their own savings and financial resources to get started. So, I feel bad saying this, but I think, we're going to go back to the way my dad and mom seen it back in the 70s when they were trying to get their business going. Well, now we're finished up with sole proprietorships. We're going to talk a little bit more about partnerships. And the partnership consists of 2 or more people working together in a joint business venture. We probably don't see many partnerships in the green industry. I always, when I think of a partnership, I'm thinking of probably an accountant, an attorney, maybe some doctors or dentists, where you have 2 people with, professional license, come together and form that partnership. It helps out these guys because, you can actually, the business can still run and you take a vacation. If the dentist isn't there and all he's got is a dental hygienist and he's by himself, if he decides to go to the beach for a week, well, guess what? Somebody has to be there, or he's going to have to, hire one of these retired dentists to come in and take care of it. But if you had a partnership and there's 2 or 3 dentists working in the same dentist office, you can take the vacations. Work would go on if you decided to take a vacation. And that's why a lot of these people form the partnerships. But like I said, you probably won't see it in a green industry situation unless you have maybe 2 companies. 2 companies can form a partnership to do a particular job, or one of these large projects that's come up. 2 companies can form a joint venture to complete the job. The partners simply agree to be bound to one another in a business and to pledge their financial assets for the business. There again, they're pledging their financial assets. You really got to trust somebody if you're going to pledge your financial assets in a joint venture. You've got to really trust this person before you'd want to do that. Although many partners write out a general partnership agreement, in most situations it's not required. I would definitely want one if I was to form a partnership. The advantages of a partnership are obvious. With two or more people, the business can expand and serve more customers. Exactly. Going back, talking about the dentist. Two dentists can serve a whole lot more people than just one. And if they're working under the same roof, the overhead's cut down because you've got all that work that's being done by two dentists versus one. So, they can pay down their loans, pay down their school loans, pay down the real estate loans a lot quicker if they're having two dentists there. And partners can also contribute more financial resources than just a single individual. So if you are having to borrow money, two people going to the bank, legitimate partnership agreement, the bank's looking at you a whole lot more serious than you were probably as just being a sole proprietorship. So, two's always better for one when it comes to signing on that dotted line. A general partner's personal assets, though, can be seized to pay a judgment and sometimes put in the general partnership in a precarious situation. Once again, I don't like having my personal assets out there to be grabbed up in case I was sued or there was malpractice or anything like that involved. I need to take care of my wife and 3 little girls, so I'm going to make sure everything that we have personally is protected, because you never know what's going to happen. And just a couple days ago, and if you guys heard my my lecture on business insurance, and we were talking about liability insurance, and just 2 days ago, my father was bush hogging, and I was actually helping him that day. We was on fall break, and was helping him that day. And bush hogging a property that hadn't been mowed down or anything in about 5 years. I mean, it was just horrible. And they had some road frontage, and the back the bush hog picked up a rock and it slung it across the street and actually hit a parked car. So we could have had the same situation that one of my students' friends did. Somebody could have been sitting in that car. I mean, it didn't go through the windshield; it just cracked it. But still, again, there was a dangerous situation, and we're definitely covered with liability insurance, and we're definitely protected, by our corporation. But you just never know, and things like that are always going to happen. And I'm just not willing to put my personal assets at risk. To run a business. All right, limited partnerships. There's 2 classifications of partners, and there are the general partners and the limited partners. If I was in a partnership, I'd rather be the limited, but unfortunately, I would probably never be able to do that because I'm in the green industry, and I'm not a wealthy guy. I'm not going to be able to finance somebody else's business. The general partners, they run the day-to-day show. They're the day-to-day operations guys. They're in the office. They're in the shop. They're the ones running the business. Limited partners could be somebody that's giving you capital to get started, and they're behind the scenes. Nobody knows really who they are, just the other partners, because they've used their assets to get the business started. Like I said, general partners are responsible for the day-to-day management of the business in the same way that general partners are in a regular partnership agreement. So you could have just the general partnership, and then now we've got this new kind of partner that's coming in possibly a father-in-law that's, loans you money. That would be a good one, wouldn't it? Always hate owing in-laws money, right? But limited partners, on the other hand, they have no right to control day-to-day operations, but they also enjoy a protection that general partners do not. Their personal assets are protected. They're not the ones out there doing the malpractice or the ones that cause bodily harm or damage to other people's property. They're not the ones in the day-to-day operations. So the limited partners are only going to lose what they put into the business. Say somebody give you $20,000 to start your loan care partnership, and case in point, trying to think of a situation where something happens. You picked up several jobs, and well, let's just say it was in a car wreck, and your liability insurance expired on the vehicle, not knowing it. And that's happened. That happens to us all the time. Your insurance agent didn't call, or somehow or another it got misplaced in the mail, and then all of a sudden you realize that insurance has elapsed. Say that happens and you're in a wreck. Well, the general partner, everything of his personal assets is at stake to take care of that situation, whereas the limited partner, if he's only put $20,000 in it, that's all he could lose within a situation like that. The limited partners are protected by the limited liability. This means that the extent of their financial loss in the business is limited to the extent of their financial contribution. So what they put in is what they can lose. They can't go after the Mercedes and the house in Buena Vista because of mistakes made or accidents that's happened within the general partner's realm. All right, limited liability. Now this is probably one of my personal favorites, and that's just from learning what our accountant has told us. Now personally, I can't tell. I'm not going to tell you guys what to do. But if I was to start a new type of green industry business, whether it be a separate loan care, a separate design firm, or whatever, this would be the route that I would personally go. And that's just from listening to our accountant who does our books. That's just one of his better recommendations. But a limited liability company, it's a cross between a partnership and a corporation owned by members who may manage the company directly or delegate to officers or managers who are similar to a corporation's directors. So we have members and we have managers. The members own it, the managers run it. And you can be both a member and a manager. You can be owner, and you can actually run the day-to-day the day-to-day show as well. Most managers, most members aren't your managers, but you can be. And there's nothing wrong with 2 or 3 people going in together and being the members and owning the limited liability company and actually hiring a manager to run the show for them. In order to form a limited liability company, the company must file several documents with the state, and one of the most important is the Articles of Organization. It's the Articles of Incorporation for the corporations. But for the LLCs, you're actually going to form the Articles of Organization. This document contains the basic information about the company, including the company's name, the registered agent, and the names of the persons forming the company. Easiest thing to do is call your attorney and actually have him do the paperwork for you. Or, you can go to some of these websites and actually do it yourself. we've done both. We've got a couple of corporations, other than our landscape business. And, but the landscape business, we had our attorney do it. He's the registered agent for us. He helps conduct the meetings that we have to do each year. So that's good having that, having him on our side. Plus, he's, a real good friend of the family. And then, we formed one online using, one of the websites to do it. Very easy, costs a little less money than actually having the attorney do it. But that whole deal with the registered agent, they're the registered agent, that's included like free for the first year. And that was kind of a pain getting that switched over, getting the registered agent switched over. But it can be done. And if you're short on cash or want to get it started a little quicker, the online companies, they do work well. I mean, I don't have a problem with them, but I still like being able to go to my accountant's office, our attorney's office, and do any of the legal stuff that needs to be done with our corporation. All right, the name of a limited liability company must contain the phrase limited liability company or some other easily recognizable abbreviation such as LLC. And, guys, I see it more and more every day. Every time we get in the car and head up the road, I see an absolute brand new landscaper that I've never seen before. I see one a day, if not more. And a lot of them on the side of the truck have LLC, Their accountants must agree with my accountant, but that looks like the route that a lot of people are going is with the LLC. LLCs can take advantage of the protection of limited liability, as well as enjoying some flexibility of a partnership and the financial advantages of spreading investment over a larger pool of individuals. So, my case in point, this is why people are doing it. You're protected. You have that limited liability. You have the flexibility of a partnership. Say you have, 2 or 3 small landscape guys, get together and form one larger. The assets are pooled. There's still that limited liability. And, it's a lot easier to go to the bank with 3 signatures than it is just one. So, LLCs, like I said, that's what, if I was to form a new company today, that's what I would be forming. LLCs also allow individual owners to pass through losses on their personal income tax return. That's a biggie. That's a biggie because we all know when you're first starting out in a business, first couple of years, you might not be making as much money as you want. You may even be losing money. My dad does strawberries now. He's big into that, and that's kind of the route he's wanting to go. Is kind of slow this landscape business down and concentrate more on agritourism on the farm here and doing the strawberries. So it was kind of hard, the first couple of years doing the berries, didn't quite make as much as we thought. So there were some losses. Well, that's, he's able to pass that down through his personal income tax. And, because he has the farm set up, he's just a sole proprietorship on the farm, as we already discussed. But if he decides to do his farm as an LLC and, he has a bad year with berries or anything else, he can actually pass that through on his personal income tax. Versus if he was a corporation, I'm not going to do that unless you're an S corporation, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And I hate to get sidetracked, but I get a little bit excited talking about this. Individuals who own shares in limited liability companies are referred to as the members, not partners or shareholders. But if you're an owner, you're a member. Hey, you're the member of the club. And the day-to-day management of a limited liability company is handled by the managers. And very, very simple to remember. Every time you go in a fast food restaurant, they got a picture of the manager on the wall. The manager is the day-to-day guy running the show. Your members are the ones that would actually own the fast food place. Now we're getting into corporations. An organization that is formed under state corporate law exists for legal purposes as a separate being or an artificial person. The stockholders have no liability for corporate debts beyond the value of their stock. So it's kind of hard to get people to invest in the landscape business, pretty much. Form a corporation and go public, it's probably not going to happen. But you know, if you're running a landscape business and you form a corporation, you actually issue yourself stock within the company, and that corporation being a separate person, I mean, it's not going to sit down and have dinner with you, but on paper, it's its own individual being, and that way, anything that's held in the corporate, owned by the corporation, is subject to be seized for bankruptcy, or to be seized for you know, a liability or judgments or anything like that. They can't still go after you. Personally, they can't. A corporation is considered to be an artificial person, blah, blah, blah. Hey, but once created, a corporation continues to exist separate and distinct from the people that compose it. So, back to that situation. I start Sunset Loans. I decide to be a corporation. I've got 2 or 3 employees working for me now. If I were to pass away or whatever, the corporation still exists. It'd just be a matter of writing in a new president or something like that. And that's probably what my wife would do. But having employees, it's still going to continue. It still exists on paper. It's still there, even though I'm the one that started it. If I'm dead and gone, or if I decide to sell it, the corporation still exists, even though I'm not part of it, as to say. It keeps on ticking. And there is a wide range of corporation types, ranging from small, privately held corporations to huge multinational corporations with offices scattered across the globe. And we see that. We see that with all the big franchises in the lawn industry. You know, their corporations, they have the offices in every state. Or regional offices at least, and then, but you know, more so what we see in this business, we're the small type business owners that have incorporated or formed LLCs, and you know, that's what we see. We're a family business in the green industry. The persons who own the corporation are called shareholders. And shareholders are also entitled to an annual payment referred to as a dividend based on corporate profits. And me and my brother, when we were young, you know, well, we weren't young. Actually, Dad formed a corporation when I first graduated college. You know, I was still younger than I am now. But, you know, we thought that was pretty cool. That at the end of the year, you know, we'd get a decent little check based on the profits. You know, even if, you know, we only had like 5% each. So, I mean, we'd get like a $400 or $500 check, and that was like a big bonus for us. So that was always pretty cool. But the more shareholders you have, the more annual payment that's going to go out of your pocket. You know, but 9 times out of 10, you are the owner, you are the shareholder, so you're getting that little bit of annual payment. And if you let your kids be shareholders within your corporation, they'd actually get that little check at the end of the year as well, too. Corporations have officers who manage corporate affairs. These officers are responsible for negotiating with vendors, hiring and firing employees, and all the other tasks that would associate with any business manager. This is your president, this is your vice president, this is your treasurer, your secretary, all the cool titles that we can have. You know, I thought it was cool when Dad gave me the new business card that said vice president of his company. I, you know, jumped up and down. Little things like that matters in the small business, but I didn't nearly have the headache as he actually had. All right, directors decide on long-term goals and the strategies for their corporation, which they put into effect through corporate officers. So you can have the board of directors. And your board of directors for your irrigation company could be your accountant, could be your attorney, could be your banker, could be you know, a retired landscape guy or irrigation guy that you really admire. But what it is you want you want their advice, and you want them to kind of help you with your long-term goals and strategies for your future. So you always want to surround yourself with people smarter than yourself, and that's what I've always done. That's what's made me into the person that I am right now. I have always surrounded myself with people smarter than me. I'm learning from them every day. And I want to learn something new every day. So that's why I always associate with people who I want to be like, or people whose advice that really matters to me. So this is what you would want informing your board of directors for your landscape or irrigation company. Shareholders do not enjoy the pass-through provisions for income tax purposes that are seen in sole proprietorships, general partnerships, and other business structures that we discussed in this chapter. A corporation pays its own income taxes. So if you are a true C corporation, the corporation has a big profit for the year. Well, the corporation is going to pay tax on that profit. And you, as the owner, operator, and shareholder of your C corporation, you're going to pay tax on your salary. So you're actually paying double taxation. So, your corporation's made a big chunk of money. You're going to pay tax on the profit. You're also going to pay yourself a salary that's going to pay taxes. And the bad thing here is, with a corporation, you have a bad loss. If you're in the nursery business, you lose a lot of crops to cold damage or whatever. Well, the corporation has that loss. You can't pass it on through your personal income tax return. The corporation's the one that would have the loss, not you being a shareholder of your company. As an artificial person, a corporation may own property, negotiate contracts, and in many ways enjoy a degree of flexibility that resembles that seen in sole proprietorships and partners. So this is I always refer to my company as like one of your children. I mean, you're wanting to nurture it, you're wanting it to grow. And as the corporation grows and matures, it's able to own stuff, own property, and be involved in contracts, to actually to be a part of something big like that. And that's what you want to do. You want to have that corporation that's able to do that. So when it is time to retire or it's time to get out of the business, you can actually sell that company, and it's a lot easier, in my opinion, probably a lot easier to sell that corporation than it would be to sell that sole proprietorship. Corporations do not die. And although a corporation may cease to exist because of bankruptcy or by merger with another corporation, it does not cease to exist when individual shareholders, directors, or officers die. So the corporation's still going to keep running. It's still going to have somebody in charge. It's going to have the officers that run the day-to-day show. But back to the thing again with me. If I was to start a Sunset Lawns business, and we're a corporation, and me and my wife's part of it, and the kids are older and they're a part of it, and their spouses get involved or whatever. When I do kick the bucket, the corporation's still going to be there, and the business is still going to exist. But if I was the sole proprietorship and I was the only one working in the business, cutting each lawn each week, when I kick the bucket, nobody's going to be able to do the work there. So, that business would cease to exist. This corporation is going to help keep everything going. Shares in corporations are bought and sold by millions of people every day on the various stock exchanges around the world. We're a corporation. We're not that big. We'll never be that big. It's only handled privately, and that's just between the family members. But the share ownership is in the form of stock certificates and a source of wealth for many millions of people. But not too many people own stock in landscape companies, especially the small ones that we are. And we don't issue stock out. We're not a public company. We're private. And like I said, all the stocks, the shares are between my mom and dad and my brother and myself for right now. All states have rules about how corporations are formed. In most situations, parties form a corporation by filing the articles of incorporation with the state. And we already talked about the LLCs. They're forming the articles of organization, but corporations are going to file the articles of incorporation with the state. The articles of incorporation set out the basic details of the corporate entity, and these are going to include the name of the corporation, the number of shares the corporation is authorized to issue, the classes of stock issue, the name and address of the registered agent, which, don't forget, that can be yourself. We have our attorney that's doing it now. The other corporation that we have, we are the agent. I like having our attorney to do that. I mean, he can handle all that, situations for us. And it also includes the names and addressees of the principal incorporators, the people that actually formed that corporation. Also, with the annual meeting that's held among the people who create the corporation has several purposes. The parties elect officers for the corporation and then enact bylaws for the day-to-day management of the corporation. And usually, this is the annual meeting that's going to happen once a year. Our attorney, guys, it can be done over the phone as long as you record the minutes and have documentation. And our attorney's always told us that if especially when you get if you ever get audited or anything like that for tax purposes, that's one of the first things the IRS is going to see. Is they're going to want to see your minutes to these annual meetings, and they do not like it when you're not acting like a corporation. A corporation is supposed to have the annual meetings, and they, from what I understand, they could actually shut you down because you're not acting like a corporation. Corporations have the meetings and record the minutes and document everything. So they want to see that you, if you are a corporation, that you are acting like a corporation. The doctrine that holds, this doctrine holds that when a person uses corporate property interchangeably with his private property, the court may disregard the existence of the corporation and seize the person's personal assets. Once again, there it is. You're not acting like a corporation. So if you're not acting like a corporation, they can deem it that the corporation doesn't really exist, and they can go after your personal assets when you don't adhere to the corporation rules and regs. So form the corporation, act like the corporation, and do what you're supposed to, and those personal assets will be protected. Business people often seek out legal advice in both creating and running their businesses. True. Like I said, guys, this PowerPoint presentation is not deemed at telling you which one to do. I'm telling you, talk to your accountants, talk to your attorneys, talk to to the business people, get their advice before you do anything like that. But I would definitely seek legal advice and talk to my CPA. Legal professionals are often involved in every step of business activities and assist with the drafting and filing of articles of incorporation to bankruptcy actions if the business is not able to stay afloat. So they can help you start it and they can help you shut it down. And like I just said earlier, I like surrounding myself with people smarter than me, and that's my accountant, that's my attorney, that's our bankers. I like prying into their minds. I like seeing what they have to say. So use these people. That it's going to cost you a little bit of money, but it's well worth it in the end. And we also need to look at local ordinances. They may require your business to have a license or other permits to run specific types of businesses. We have to have an actual business license where we're at in the city to do it. Not only our irrigation license, but have to have the business license. And if the business will run out of out of your home, You got to watch out for zoning permits. You know, it's a little hard to run a landscape and irrigation business out of a home in a subdivision. Luckily we're on a farm here. Never had a problem. We got its own farm, and we're running an active farm as well. So the business equipment that we have here, people's never going to say anything about. But if we were to live in a subdivision, I couldn't park the truck and trailer. I couldn't have a truck with a pipe rack on top and a trencher on the trailer behind it. And I couldn't do that every day. That would involve zoning issues, and the neighbors could actually get a little ticked off with you on that. Guys, this is the last slide of the PowerPoint, and this was from a textbook we use. It was in chapter 15 of business law. The publisher is Delmar Cengage Learning. Great group of people. Love teaching this class to my horticulture marketing and management class. If there's any questions, guys, you can always email me at jones@ericw@gmail, or give me a call at 336-345-2148. Now that you finished watching the PowerPoint lecture, go back to the Moodle site, take the little short 10-question quiz for it, and once that's done, I will actually email you your proof of attendance, so you guys can have proof that you took this course to show the North Carolina Irrigation Contractors Licensing Board. I appreciate it. Once again, I'm Eric Jones, and you take care.